and through a political process. I think it is in our interest to make sure that there is a political process that ends this conflict. But I think also that, at least from the UAE's perspective, I think our position on the conflict in Ukraine has been a very principled position. I think from as a country our size in this region, I think we don't accept that conflict is resolved through military means, and at the same time we think that in this international system, sovereignty has to be protected and sovereignty has to be respected. But while we're saying that, the devices that need to be used are political devices. It should be political process that will resolve this. It should be a political process that will ensure that conditions following the end of conflict in Ukraine are not the sort of conditions that will bring about another conflict in a few years. I think only a political process is able to do that, to address the Ukraine issue, but at the same time ensure that grievances do not bring about another conflict out of the way that this thing has been resolved.
So let's talk a little bit more about technology. You've both mentioned the partnership between the UAE and India. Dr. Jaishankar, you've said recently that the rise of India will be deeply linked to the rise of Indian technology. And it is a tried and tested tool for spurring economic improvement. But technology nationalism can also be a challenge and a risk. And if you think about China, for example, potentially a case study in technology nationalism and its dangers. The COVID catastrophe in China might be argued to be traced to their refusal to accept Western mRNA vaccines. So I wonder how you avoid technology nationalism while encouraging technology growth.
Well, again, I think the UAE has benefited from globalization and has benefited from a world that has been more of an open, competitive, trading and ideas actually platform. So really we do look with concern at the sort of technology nationalism that you have spoken about. But we understand that at the root of these concerns is political issues. These are not, at the root, are not technological issues. They are national security issues, political issues, and I think we need to accept that while this sort of tension is in the international system, there will be a ripple effect. There will be a ripple effect on how we trade, there will be a ripple effect on how we invest, there will be a ripple effect on how we sort of work in technology, collaborating rather than always competing. This is a sort of world that we are moving into, following the sort of naivete of the early globalism. It's not a good place to be in, to be honest, but I think at the same time there are political reasons, there are national security reasons. And I think for us, a country our size, in our region, this is a tougher world to navigate, but that's the way it is, and we have to navigate it.
Look, it's natural technology would be nationally used. So we that something has fundamentally changed. Oh, everything has fundamentally changed. There will be national competitions based on technological capabilities. Different nations, different groupings of nations asserting their influence or dominance or whatever you call it. That's for real. That's the part which I said, the constant competition among nations. But there are some real issues out there. On the one hand, globalization is going to make us work collaboratively because it's in our mutual interest. But if you come, say, to some parts, let's say digital technology, There's a real debate going on today about trust and transparency, about, you know, are all countries, all companies, all providers the same? Does it matter to you under which law, regulation, ethos your data is residing? I think we can't run away from those issues. So if you ask me, will we see, in a sense, disputation, argumentation, maybe stronger in the technology world? Absolutely. I don't think it's a matter of prediction. I think it's already there. So we need to start taking positions.
And it's not just nation states that have a stake in this game either. It's companies as well, right? So let's talk for a moment about the technological hegemony of some of the big Western companies at the moment. Vaccines or tweets, a lot of the intellectual capital for technology innovation is controlled by some of these larger Western companies. And in fact, Dr. Jaishankar, I think you have over 2 million followers on Twitter. I wonder, in your world, in your better world actually, what do global technology platforms look like?
Yeah, look, again, you know, today you have tech companies. If you took their market cap and sort of put it up against the national economies of countries, I suspect some of them may qualify for a G20. You know, some of them
Would you welcome them?
Some of them are that big. It's again, these are new issues that are emerging. And in the name of, as I said, narrative setting, political correctness, we can't keep ducking these issues. It does matter. For example, I'm giving you now an Indian perspective. You know, do tech companies have the same rules when it comes to cooperating on, say, national security matters? You know, which countries would they respond to, which governments would they respond to, which would they not?
Which countries should they respond to?
Certainly countries like India. So I don't know who else. I presume they will respond to countries in there. But, you know, everything else, I'm not saying everything in the world should be regulated, but there are accepted norms and practices and sort of operating ethos. So if really you have big enterprises which have monetized data through their particular models, in the name of, shall I say, freedom, would you leave them completely to decide what they should be doing once they've reached that stage? I mean, there are some live controversies going on. I mean, I'm not getting into that, but you know that and I know that. So the idea that somewhere tech is neutral geopolitically, tech is neutral within societies, it's not true. They've not been. Think about it.
What does this look like from your perspective, Dr. Anwar?
Well, again, as I said, I mean, technology, number one, is a great wealth creator. I mean, huge wealth for countries, for companies, is being created for technology. I think at the same time, technology provides developmental leaps. Many countries, through technology, can actually create a 5 or 10-year leap because they are big on AI or big on this or that. So I think it's definitely not neutral, as Dr. Jaishankar said. I think from our perspective, I think what is important, the UAE, for example, this year, for the first time, hit or is hitting $500 billion in GDP. So we really understand this is our first time that we do hit this number, and for a country our size to have a GDP that size is quite extraordinary. But I think we understand also that to continue this sort of development, we need to invest in technology, we need to partner in technology and to navigate our way right now, along as what you were saying is more technology nationalism. But I think that's the way things are, and then we need to deal with it.
If I could just, in a sense, build further on what both of us said. Given the centrality of technology to our existence, to our businesses, to our progress, we are going to need to factor it in more and more, both in governance and in international relations. So again, I'm giving you the data side of it as an easy example. I think a lot of societies, I certainly would speak for mine, today feel the need to be comfortable about trusted providers when it comes to an area like telecom. Okay. Similarly, there would be countries who would worry about cross-border data flows. You know, who's handling it? Now, companies are obviously crucial, but all companies, you know, and all destinations and all societies are not the same. So we have to, you know, we can't make it a kind of a theology that, you know, companies are safe and the problem is with the countries. Companies are part of a country. I mean, countries don't run businesses, or at least most of them do, some do. So I think we are entering this domain where, if I were to say the next 10 years, the big arguments and the big maneuverings are going to be around technology. It's going to be around data, it's going to be around chips, it's going to be around AI, it's going to be around space. I could give you more examples.
So that's interesting, because you mentioned in your opening remarks the cooperation between the UAE and India around some of these emerging, these other areas like space, like AI. Tell me a little bit about how that partnership, you think, will help you individually as well as create this new kind of globalization.
Well, again, I would like to echo Dr. Jaishankar's enthusiasm really about the bilateral relationship. I think this gives me an opportunity to come and sort of reflect on what has been really a wonderful, wonderful trajectory of the bilateral relationship since 2015. What we have achieved in 7 years has been remarkable. And I think, you know, Dr. Jaishankar did not perhaps mention this, but I think leadership, really Prime Minister Modi's leadership and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed's leadership in this has been a major catalyst here.
I just thought everybody knew that.
Okay. But, you know, I mean, to start with, this is a very historical relationship. And this is a relationship where we've always had the private sector ahead of the curve of government. I think right now, the government is giving the private sector a run in leading this relationship. And I think what has happened is incredible. I mean, since 2015, the milestones are just too many to sort of catalog, and they are all over. So what was really a good relationship, an excellent relationship, has become a strategic and fit for the future relationship, if I can describe it in that way. I mean, if you really think about it, SEPA, I was speaking to the Indian ambassador, Sanjay Sudhir, only last week, and he was telling me, we don't really have the official figures yet, but we are seeing about a 30% increase in trade following the signing of SEPA in February. And our target really is to reach trading levels of $100 billion with India. These are with India, $100 billion.
This year.
Yeah, $100 billion with India. So really, where can we get all that extra sort of, you know, sort of revenue streams, so to speak, in the relationship? I think technology is one of the major things. I mean, we're doing things in space, we are doing things in oil, We are doing things in food security, you name it. It's really across the board. The UAE today, I think, is the 10th FDI player in India today, and I think this is quite significant. But I think the real added advantage is what we do on technology. If we are able to harness technology, make sure that we can work together in various areas of technology within our bilateral and, as I said, multilateral, smaller multilateral forums, I think you will see that the remarkable achievements of the past 7 years will really pale in front of what we are really seeing in a truly, truly promising relationship.
Interesting. We've run out of time. One final thought from you.
I give you two final thoughts. One, in this period when our relationship has been very strong, we've also discovered, for example, during COVID, how firmly we stood by each other, in terms of handling community, we kept our food supplies flowing, the cooperation we had on vaccines. So, in a world where we are going to get more disruptions due to conflict or COVID or climate, whatever, the reliability today of relationship between India and UAE, I think, sets it apart. That's my first point. The second point is, the UAE is following its transformational path. A lot of us here are familiar with it. India is doing its own. Now, it so happens that the two paths have the ability to support each other and kind of accelerate the other country's movement. So when I look at the ambitions of UAE and the ambitions of India, to my mind, there's a very strong convergence, and that's really where I see the future of the relationship.
Can I just mention an anecdote, if you allow me? Again, during COVID, early COVID time, Dr. Jaishankar called our foreign minister, and he was responsible for the distribution of vaccines. And he called and said, I'm looking and seeing that you have requested 200,000 vaccines from India. Are you sure this is all you want? We can give you 2 million if you want. And I think this sort of, this touches you, because really I think what has really happened to this relationship is this reservoir of trust. I think the trust that underpins any relationship really makes you do wonderful things, and I think this is what we have been doing.
Thank you. That seems an appropriate moment to end this panel, or should we say press pause, because I can see that the collaboration will continue.